How insane is that? He's bringing all these other things to the table while inherently being the most valuable hero in the game, probably because he has this crazy inspiration. And did I mention, as it stands now, it is permanent. Guys, we very well may have a new best hero in the game. I am not exaggerating. This hero has the potential to be game-changing for every single account of every single level in Watcher of Realms. This is still very early on. I'll pop up that kit right now. You can see I dressed up an image created by Aresis and Rokanchi. Crazy, crazy stuff with this guy. I'm going to give you a full kit breakdown with tons of math. I'm going to explain everything, but the short version is, and what you guys need to know, is this hero, in its current incarnation in the game file, it's not yet live. We don't know when it's coming, but certainly, as you can see by how extensive that kit that we currently have already is, it should be fairly soon. When I say fairly, I mean within the next 2 or 3 months for sure. And this hero, as it stands now, is better than Dolores. Full stop, better than Dolores in basically every single way. He is 6 cost, he, she, or they, whatever it's going to be, is 6 cost as opposed to Dolores' 5 cost. And that's literally it. The rest of the kit is so much better. The inspiration is stronger. It is lunacy. What you're about to look at and what you're about to hear from me are descriptions of definitively my most wanted hero in the game now, and I want to get this news out to you guys as soon as possible. This is going to be a pseudo leak from me. It already was leaked by Aresis. If you're a Russian language speaker, definitely go check him out. Thank you so much to the Leak Boys for the information compiled by T, Destined, Panther, but most importantly for this one, Rokanchi, who prepared all the information, and then Aresis, who was the first person who brought it to light, thus opening the door for a non-leaker like me to cover it. But I need to cover this, guys, because I think a lot of people will change their summoning habits and their plans once you see it. And oh, by the way, as it stands now, this hero is not a lord. This hero is not an ancient exclusive. This is a normal hero, a normal summoning pool hero. Rare summoning crystals, divine summoning crystals. This hero is going to be so potent. Debuffs, crowd control, summons, damage, and then, of course, the most potent inspiration effect in the entire game. Nutty stuff, guys. I'm Fastidious. How the heck are ya? Let's get into it.
Fastidious.
Fastidious.
By the way, guys, if you like this artwork behind me, thank you very much. We designed it all ourselves. We do not have yet game images for this hero. So for now, this is the image I'm going to use. We created these 2 fantastic images. Thank you to R-Type, who created this one right here using AI, and to Muffin, who created this one right here. Then yours truly. I spent a lot of time in Photoshop making these things glow, making them look pretty. Enough of all that. Let's get into it. This kit is a beautiful, beautiful thing. It is a work of art. Let's start on the top. The name, Beesler. That's what I'm choosing to call this hero. Panther and Rokanchi were calling him Beelzebub, which is like some, old story about a Lord of the Flies. And this guy is a summoner mage who summons flies. So in a way, you could call him the Lord of the Flies. I mean, that's what he is. I'm going to call him the Beesler for short. Beesler just sounds good to me. He's a legendary hero. I'm going to call him a him too. We don't know anything really, but let's keep it simple. He is a legendary hero. He's a cultist hero, and he is a mage. He is not your typical mage though, and let's begin with these stats right above my head. You can see fairly respectable HP, but nothing special at all. Enough HP that when you focus at HP, and many of you might want to do that early on in builds to make sure he doesn't die, you have enough of an HP pool there, enough hit points to get something going. Now the attack. For a legendary mage, if he was a DPS, 3,145 for a legendary mage would be so far and away the lowest in the entire game, by a mile. That's because 2 things, right? You're strictly going to build him with tons and tons and tons of attack on top of that, since he is an inspiration hero. And if we already look over here, his inspiration effect is humongous. You can see it starts at 35%. If you're looking under Darkness Rising, it goes all the way up to 55%. So already the wheels are probably turning in your head. To have a 55% inspiration hero, that is only 5% less than A1 Dolores, who does 60%. But Dolores, even at A2, only has a base attack of 2,662. If I give you a quick preview of some of the math we will go over later right now, you will see he has such potent inspiration. Having that high a percentage with a significantly larger attack pool than Dolores, even at A2 Dolores at 2662, he's coming in at 3145. So when everything is said and done, and this all, by the way, we'll go through it, but is with identical gear, he's coming out on top. He's the new top inspiration hero in the game. Another reason, if we go back to this lower amount of attack, it's because he's not the only one doing the attacks. He's going to be summoning flies, these putrid flies, and they will be helping him out a very big bit. The final thing above my head we have to focus on is the cost. As it stands now, Beesler is 6 cost. 6. That's one more than Dolores. He's like freaking free. I think Aelin is 6. I mean, he is so cheap with for an inspiration hero, and for that percentage, such a high amount of attack. He's already a brilliant hero. If that was the entire kit, he'd be a must save for, and then when he arrives, obviously a must summon. However, as you're about to see, and we'll get into the skills right now, he has got debuffing, some major magic vulnerability that obviously is going to synergize very well with other mages, other cultists, things like that. He's got a ton of crowd control, basically constant uptime on his slows. Again, that will synergize very well with cultists and cultist lords. And then finally, he does have damage. You're going to build him with so much attack, so he'll still clear thresholds, especially for progression. It's not that much, but him and his flies will really put a decent beating out. And this is all gravy on top of the fact that this is the new, probably best hero in the game, just because he's got more inspiration than Dolores. This game is all about attack. It's all about clearing defense thresholds. How insane is that? He's bringing all these other things to the table, while inherently being the most valuable hero in the game, probably because he has this crazy inspiration. And did I mention, as it stands now, it is permanent? Well, I will. We're about to get into the skills. I have to give one disclaimer. None of this is official. It's not yet on test server. It's not yet on Forerunner. Obviously, it's not on global. This is from the Leak Boys. Another huge thank you to Oressus and Rokanchi. And then, of course, Panther17, Destin, the main leaker of the realms himself. And finally, Terran. Fantastic stuff. Let's get into it now, but please keep that disclaimer in mind. It's just like when me and Destin broke down Debbie, who then became Ingrid. Several skills kind of tweaked and changed. Without a doubt, he will be amazing. There's no question. If he comes out like this, he will be godly. We don't know exactly what it's going to look like, but it will be pretty darn close. Let's kick it off with the talent. Actually, before we do, I do want to go over all the red and green highlighted things. So as we go through the talent and the skills, you will inherently know what they mean. So we see here there's going to be putrid flies and a slow. Later on, you'll see magic damage vulnerability. Let's get into what that actually is. We're going to go right here where it says slow in red underneath corrupted swarm. So the slow in question here is a minus 50% slow. It's cutting movement speed in half. That is his slow. Not as potent as like a skilled up Mari with a 75% slow, but not as weak as like a Kriya with a minus 25% slow. Next up, we've got inspiration. This is the key thing that's making him such a total god in this game when he does arrive. Inspiration, just like Constance, Dolores, Pharisee, Dasami, inspiration, you are lending a proportion of your attack. Whoever the caster is lending a proportion of their attack to all allies in range. Occasionally there'll be a condition that it's like the allies with the 3 highest attack, right? That's what Pharisee does. But basically, you build all your attack off of your base attack, all your artifacts, your pantheon, whatever. That comes together to a huge attack number. When you're doing inspiration in the battle, a proportion of that attack, right? Like a chunk of that will be lent to all the other allies meeting the conditions. So either in the range or the 3 with the highest attack in the range, something like that. Now we've got magic damage vulnerability. So this is strictly if magic damage is coming in, more is taken. So he's getting a 15% magic damage vulnerability. So all magic damage incoming will get a 1.15x multiplier. That can get higher with awakenings. More on that later. And then finally in green there, you see putrid flies. This is a unique thing to Beesler's kit. He is the Beelzebub. He is the Lord of the Flies. He summons flies. When he does summon them, those flies inherit 100% of his attributes. So it's basically like clones of him, but little flies going around. They roam around his basic attack range, which is your typical 3x4 range you see of like a single target marksman, or some mages, you know, like a Virna or like Glacius when he ults. That's his permanent range, just like Virna, 3x4. The flies will roam around in there with his full stats, and they'll be doing basic attacks, 100% damage to 5 enemies. So a 5 enemy AoE multi-hitter, whatever you want to call it. That is what the putrid flies do. Let's get into it. Kick it off with the talent. Damage dealt by the hero and his putrid flies, the flies that he summons, inflicts slow for 2 seconds. So again, we went over it. This is a 50% slow, and it's on all damage. All damage. So it's near 100% uptime. If there are more than 5 targets, sure, some of them might not be getting hit with the slow. For most content, there is not more than 5 targets. And then also you'll see it is all damage. Yes, his basic attack, as you will see, is 5 targets. The putrid flies do 5 targets, but again, they're roaming around the range, so they're not always hitting the same 5 if there are many there. But finally, you will see there is a passive that comes along with his ultimate where he can hit up to 8, 9, or with max skill ups, 10 targets. So a proper big AoE. This is crazy. Huge amounts of crowd control. All of those cultist lords have the damage increases if the target is under crowd control. He's a ridiculous source of it, just like a hero like Mari. You know, he's going to keep a really, really high uptime. Very, very strong. And it is also worth mentioning the slows just as an effect. That's a very strong thing. It's taking a while for your targets to reach you. For the enemies in Gear Raid 1, for example, where he will be almost certainly the best hero in the game, like him and Boreas will be GG. That's everything. Those are the 2 best heroes. It's going to take them longer to hit the wall and tear that down. Crazy hero. That's going to be huge for progression. It has his same range you're going to see always, 3 tiles by 4 tiles, that nice little rectangle. You can see it right there next to where it says auto. It deals 100% damage all the way up to 120% damage. That is with skill ups. AoE, so it's always hitting multiple targets, up to 5 enemy targets. So not a crazy, you know, 8 or 10 targeter, but for a basic, always hitting 5 targets, that's very strong. And remember, when he has flies out, they will be doing this exact same basic attack, only at the 100%. It cannot scale up to 120%, or at least we don't know that it can yet now. But they'll be floating around within that 3x4 range. They're not always going to hit the same 5 targets. Should be a really proper, strong thing. Now, Darkness Rising, the way it's currently written, is so good because it is a permanent inspiration. There's no ulting, there's no this, there's no timing it out, there's no this, that, and the other. Applies starting at 35%, but going all the way up to 55%, applies inspiration to all allies in the hero's skill range. This is not while the ult is active. This is not while flies are there. This is not anything. It's just this first part. Anyone in that 3x4 range that you can squeeze in, as long as he's there and deployed, will receive 55% inspiration. Again, scaling off of a very high, given that percentage, 3145 base attack on Beesler. Very strong stuff. There's a second part of the passive. This is just a separate thing. This is gonna, you can see they're trying to make a summoner meta. I would be very surprised if we don't start needing summoners, whether it be for a specific codex, a specific new gear dungeon, something where summoners become necessary because they're trying to make it happen. I hope they can make it happen because it's a very cool thing. But here you go. This is a buff just for summoners. Reduces the attack interval of allied summons, including his own summons, within 2 tiles of the putrid flies by 20 and then 25% with skill ups. So the key thing to think about here, the flies will always be near each other within 2 tiles. They'll be fitting within his range. So they will inherit, right? If you see here from when we went over the putrid flies a minute ago, they inherit 100% of his attributes. This includes attack speed and his basic attack interval, which, by the way, I cannot believe I didn't mention that. Let me duck my head. Is 2 seconds. So this is how you know they envision him as a support. Mari is another mage with a 2.0 second interval. Aeon as well. So this is a typical thing, right? If they're not pushing high attack and they have a low basic attack interval, they're saying, hey, this is a supporty kind of unit. And obviously, as you can see from the kit, this holds true for Beesler. But you can see they're going to inherit that great basic attack interval, whatever attack speed you build upon him. And then they're actually going to be even faster than that because they're cutting whatever basic attack interval you build on him by 20 or 25% with skill ups. So at max skill ups, let's say you built him pretty fast, the way you'd build a Mari or something, you cut that attack interval in half. So he's only a 1.0 second attack interval. The putrid flies would be at a 0.75 second attack interval because they are buffing themselves. So inherently, this is a huge thing, reducing the attack interval of allied summons, even if you're not bringing other summoner heroes. Because it is just lowering the attack intervals with a multiplicative unit here with these percentage decreases, and it's not some like stagnant flat amount of attack speed that is added, for example, so it's going to be relative and different for every different hero. That's very strong. So if you are running an Anora with Labor, right, or if you're running Kriya, maybe this makes Kriya relevant. Those flies will speed her crows up enough that she's going to be really good. Maybe it's going to work, I don't know, could it work with Kata? There's a lot of summoners that maybe this unlocks something for them. Pretty exciting. Very exciting if this kind of summoner synergy content where you need a summoner team arrives, whether again that be a codex or a special gear dungeon, something like that, a special boss that needs to be hit by summons. Who knows? Let's continue to the second passive now, and this is actually part of the ultimate, so we can treat these together, and I'm actually going to skip Plague of Rain here to go to Corrupted Swarm, the actual ultimate, and then we'll fold in Plague of Rain, because they just go together. He's one of those heroes that this also happens during the ultimate. That's what that passive basically is. So if we go to Corrupted Storm, this is ultimate. It is a manual, which I think is always nice. Lets you actually sweat the content out and be in control. We're just going to talk at max skill ups here. It will have a duration of 22 seconds. 700 initial rage, and the ult will cost 1000 rage. What happens during this? He summons putrid flies. These putrid flies, as we discussed, will roam throughout the skill range. The question is, how many putrid flies? We do not know that yet. Is it 1 every ultimate? Is it 2? Can he max out at only 2 or 3? We don't know. That will very much dictate, I'd say, how much he is a DPS unit. If it's just like one little swarm and that counts as 1, I guess swarm and 1, that's kind of oxymoronic. But if it's 1 at a time, it's not going to be that crazy. Again, it's not like he's putting out so much damage because you're going to build him in so many other ways. But you can see endgame, if this could cap at 2 or 3 or something, then you're really cooking. Then you've got a big thing going on. Let's go to the more interesting part of the ult that comes with this passive here, Plague of Ruin. During the ultimate, the hero and the putrid flies release Plague of Rain 1 time every 5, then 4, then 3 seconds at max skill ups, dealing 150% AoE damage on up to 8, then 9, then 10 at max skill up targets, so it's a proper AoE, and it inflicts magic damage vulnerability for 3 seconds with each hit. No extra condition here. Again, that is a 15% magic damage vulnerability. The interesting thing, right, is it's him and the flies are releasing that Plague of Ruin, and it's going to be every 3 seconds with max skill ups. It's hitting 10 targets. If you have him plus 2 flies, that means every 3 seconds, and this is over 22 seconds, so if we round it down to 21 seconds, so it's a multiple of 3, you can get 7 instances of this AoE damage, but coming as like a triple, right, if it's him and 2 flies. So you're actually talking about 450% AoE magic damage. To be seen exactly mechanically how this works. I think that would be insanely strong, so I'm guessing maybe it's him and the flies, it only costs us 1 instance, or it can only be him and 1 fly. That is not clear to me yet, but you can see it's very legit in terms of hitting a bunch of targets, and every one of those hits is putting a 3-second magic damage vulnerability. So if you're running him with some other big DPS, like if you're running him next to a Boreas or a Virna or a Comet that's putting out big magic DPS, all of that damage is getting the big vulnerability. Not as strong as someone like Mari putting out the 20%, but you can kind of see he's kind of like Mari plus Dolores plus damage. Like I'd say at the worst right now, and this is an incredible worst, he is Mari plus Kriya plus Dolores. You know, as bad as Kriya is as a DPS, she still exists and does do some damage. That's like his basement, I would say right now. He's like Kriya level damage with Dolores level inspiration and then Mari level support, maybe slightly worse than Mari level support, but he is hitting more enemies than her. So it's very, very interesting. It's a very good kit. We've kind of broken it all down. I know I'm taking my time on this, but it's so exciting, and I really want to impress upon all you guys how good he really is and why we all should be saving up for him and getting pretty gosh darn excited. Let's get into that math before we get into the awakenings so you guys can fully wrap your head around how flippin' strong he is. My God, because the answer is flippin' very. Let me make myself a little smaller. These are all the key inspiration units in the game. You can see in parentheses I've put their awakenings, and I've got all this stuff here on the left. So if we look at the names of these rows, we have the base attack. So I'm ignoring Dolores at A0. Everyone will have A1 Dolores, so they have the 60% inspiration, and then everyone, once you've played a bit, will have A2 Dolores, where you get an additional 5% attack. That brings her up to 2,660 to attack. That is her base attack. Then I'm going to do constants at A0. Obviously, some of us will get A2, A3, so on constants, and her attack can be higher, but this is just base mode. She's going to have 3248 base attack. It's actually very close to Beasler at A0 as well. Fasti comes in with by far the highest at 4,799 base attack, and then Beesler at a 0 is 3,145, a 2 is 3,445, so 300 more. I'm just showing that to show him at max potential how much inspiration we're really talking, because it's insane. So I have this gear set. Let me throw this on display mode very quickly. I'm on my test server and I moved it around. These are the 3 heroes in question because obviously Beesler is not yet in the game. So this is the best inspiration set I could build using the optimal sets, Invigoration and Warlord, and I just moved it around. In all these instances, I had the hero in question wearing a maxed out Keen Wisdom. Obviously, you can do better with mythic artifacts, and that will be a key point at the end of this, because if you didn't think 13% inspiration more than Dolores was that interesting, imagine, and I'll walk you through it, once you put him in a tier of Twilight, right? Because none of these other classes, these 2 healers and the tank Constance, have an attack scaling artifact like that. The tier of Twilight, you were talking about insane. Let's just talk about it now. So we're gonna go through all of it. But you'll see the tier of Twilight, you were talking about an extra 30% attack post-deployment boost. The best you can do with all these other guys is 5%. You're talking about another 30%. That's how crazy it is. It really is it's just nuts. If we go to Fasti now, this is the gear. I'll click through it very fast. This is the best I have on my test server, hunting for like attack bonus and flat attack. Very good stuff. You can see big rolls here, attack bonus and flat attack, big attack bonus, even some rage regen. This is as good as it gets. This is what it looks like on Fasti. And basically I ported this around with that same Keen Wisdom to all of these heroes so we could get these statistics, so I can make everything clear as day for you guys. So here you go. These are the base attacks. Then I have my Pantheon is at exactly level 50 on the test server. So that means this is not scale off of gear and stuff, but just additive also when it's all said and done, not counting the base attack plus the gear plus the Keen Wisdom artifact. We'll have a separate edition of the Pantheon bonus. So this is going to be the base attack times 0.125 because it's a 12.5% boost. You can see that number going through for all of these guys here. Then I port that gear over, we see what it looks like, and then I take that number, add the Pantheon boost for that specific hero from it, and then we get our total attack. So this is our total post-deployment attack, not counting the Keen Wisdom boost and stuff, and not counting if it was other artifacts. This is just the attack we're looking at. I repeated the process for all 3. You can see Fasti comes in with by far the most attack, Dolores significantly the least. The key thing here, though, is the inspiration bonus is essential. So even though Dolores has what? We're talking over 8,000 less attack than Fasti with this identical build, because Fasti's inspiration is 1/3 of Dolores's. Dolores actually comes out on top. You'll see these numbers now. This is the inspiration added. So we take that total number and we multiply it by that inspiration bonus. So for Dolores, it's a 60% bonus. So for Dolores, we take this total number, we multiply it by 60% or 0.6, and we get just over 8,000. 8,002. This represents 100% Dolores potential. We're using Dolores as the maximum because that's the maximum hero we've had thus far in the game. Everything else will be compared as to Dolores, if that makes sense. She's what we're considering the pinnacle, the optimal situation. Constance, we follow the same procedure. Take this nice total, multiply now by 0.45 because she has only 45% inspiration. This comes out to just over 7,000. 7,010, and you can see compared to the max potential, considering Dolores was the ultimate that we had, the pinnacle, she's coming in at 88% potency. So her inspiration is 88% strength of max strength, which is Dolores. Now, if we move on to Fasti, we do the same thing. He has this huge total number. However, we cut it into a fifth. He has by far the biggest number. However, we're going to cut it, reduce 80% from that. We're going to multiply it by 1/5 by 0.2, comes out as 4,311. So he's at 54% potency if max potency is Dolores. We're all clear. So Constance is 12% weaker than Dolores, essentially her inspiration. Fasti is 46% weaker. What happens with Beesler? Follow the same procedure. However, it's not like I could port the gear over to him. So if you look at these numbers just next to me, I wanted to find the average multiplier that happened when we equipped that same gear set we were porting from one hero to the next, and that maxed out plus 25 Keen Wisdom. So basically what I did is I took the total and I divided it by the base attack. So what I did is we took the base attack plus gear and Keen Wisdom, we divided that by the base attack, and then we got how much that multiplied the base attack. So what was the multiple, what was the multiplier that came into effect? For Dolores, it's all slightly different because of the way it interacts with the base stats versus the Keen Wisdom. For Dolores, it was 4.88. For Constance, it was 4.67. For Fasti, it was 4.36. You can see as your base attack gets higher, the multiplier gets lower. kind of makes sense that there's a bigger base stat contribution initially, so the gear is having a lesser effect. It's less, basically the flat stats coming from like your weapon, for example, or flat attack substats are not as meaningful as your base attack to begin with was higher. And you can see I just took the average. It very similar, very likely would be just like constances because it's so close. But I actually like this because the average, if I took all these three, added them up, divided by 3, basically it was slightly lower than constances, and his base attack is slightly lower than constances. So that's how I did it. I took this average multiplier. I just multiplied Beasler's base attack at A0 by that. Comes in at just over 14,500. I did the same at A2 using this bigger base stat number because he gets plus 300 attack from his Awaken level 2. This comes in at just a hair under 16,000. Let's do all that same math. We multiply it by the inspiration bonus, which for him, obviously in both cases, is 0.55, 55%. At A0, he's giving 8,244 inspiration to all heroes in range, which, if you remember, is a higher number than the 8,002 from Dolores, and then a whopping 9,030 if you've got this guy at A2, which obviously is higher than Dolores. If we take these inspiration numbers again and divide by the Dolores number, here we're not going to get a percentage under 100. It's actually higher because it's above the former ultimate max pinnacle potency, right? So actually, Beasler's going to be 3% stronger in inspiration than Dolores when he's at A0, and 13% stronger when he is at A2. There's a final condition, and that is the tier of Twilight, right? So the tier of Twilight, he's going to get a 30% post-deployment boost. Obviously, all these numbers would be slightly different because the different base stat contributions from the mythic artifacts you would use as opposed to the epic Keen Wisdom. But just taking that number, if all the other ones did the Keen Wisdom, right? Or if they did a Golden Scarab for Dolores and Pharisee or an Astral Obelisk for Constance, they'd be looking at 5% plus the base stat. And then if they did the Keen Wisdom, they'd be looking at the little base stat from Keen Wisdom and then 16%. Beasler's looking at 30%. So you could see this number here, actually, his total attack stat, and it would include the Pantheon at this point because it's post-deployment, would come out 30% higher. So we could go like this, times 1.3. This would be the new number, over 21,000. If we then take that number and multiply it by his 55% inspiration, we're in absolutely Looney Tunes town. Over 11,000, almost 12,000 attack he will lend everyone in range. Mamma mia. What a spicy meatball. What a time to be alive. I mean, I even if they fiddle with this guy a bit, I'm sure people are going to be like, you shouldn't have made this video. Now they're going to change him. I'm not saying he's going to be broken strong. We don't know that yet. And even if they do change him and make him a little weaker, this already has the bones of a home run hero, regardless of any little changes that could be made, unless entire things are taken out of the kit. This is such an exciting hero for all of us. Let's get into the Awakenings, and I will give my final thoughts. I hope you did appreciate the math, but if you didn't, that's life, baby. That's life. Not everyone's going to like math as much as me. Let's get into it. Awaken level 1, so that magic vulnerability that is coming from Plague of Ruin that him and the Putrid Flies are putting out in conjunction with the Corrupted Swarm ultimate, that is boosted from 15% magic vulnerability to 25%. 25%, so tying Twin Fiend and Soul Kittens for the highest magic vulnerability placed in the game. Obviously, Twin Fiend and Soul Kittens can also place physical vulnerability at 25%, but those guys also need Awaken level 1 to do it. He is doing it as a normal legendary hero, just needing 1 dupe. Twin Fiend and Soul Kittens, you need dupes of legendary lords. This is super duper strong. The only higher vulnerability in the entire game is going to be someone like Ares that does a single target physical vulnerability. Here, it's only magic vulnerability, but it's a major constant AoE, not a singular burst like Twin Fiend or Soul Kittens, a constant raining of Plague of Ruin by him and the Flies, 25%. That A1 is incredible for him as a support, as a debuffer. The A2, if you want him at full inspiration, you're going to want to get it. Plus 300 base attack, taking that thing from 3,145 to 3,445. Now the A3, this is when you can stop. The A3 is what you're all going to be wanting, hopefully, to get. We'll talk about this in the conclusions. It is insanely strong. Any basic attack that hits a slowed target will restore 2% rage. His ultimate is not so expensive, but it's on the pricier side at 1,000 costs. Being able to get 2% rage per hit, when easily, if you look at that attack interval of 2 seconds, you could have him putting out a hit every second. You were talking about 2% extra rage per second. Think about how strong that is. Eloin, and granted it's a crazy support global map-wide buff, is giving you 3% every 3 seconds. If you have Beasler at a 1.0 second interval, and you have him attacking 3 times in 3 seconds, you're talking about 6% more rage. He will cycle like an absolute madman. This one is huge. The A4, kind of hate it. 1 rage regen auto, +1 rage regen auto. So every second he gets 1 more, not percent, just 1 more rage cost. So it is literally 0.1% of the rage he needs to ult. It is 1/1000th. Don't care about that. And then 5, there's a typo here. It says ILF, but it's actually if. If the target receives 2 instances of Plague of Ruin within 3 seconds, they will take additional true damage equal to 100% of the hero's attack. So for sure, the target will take 2 instances. The only way this wouldn't trigger is if he didn't have any flies summoned. If it was him by himself, you can see at max skill ups, Plague of Ruin only happens once every 3 seconds. However, if you have at least 1 more fly, it's him and at least 1 more fly will do it every 3 seconds. That's 2 instances. Now you're doing true damage. So this is really nice if there's super high walls to clear, or if you just don't want to build this guy with any crit, right? At this point, he becomes like a true damage machine during his ultimate. Super duper strong. And it's going to equal to 100% of his attack. Easily, you're building this guy with tons and tons of attack. You're talking at least 13,000, but in good builds, 14, 15, maybe some of you will even get like 16,000. Certainly you can if you've got him A2, and you will have him A2 if you have him A5. So crazy awakening, some of the best awakenings in the game. Crazy kit. He is the combination of, like, at worst, a mediocre cultist DPS combined with a better version of Dolores. The only thing you could say is Dolores is 1 less cost and has that signature diamond Dolores range. I think for a lot of content, this range will actually be better. You could see like Guild Boss 2, this is the preferable range, right? Not Dolores's diamond. A lot of cool stuff like that. And then I would also say Dolores is easier to build. She's an epic. It's easier to get epic soul stones, easier to get epic skill ups. But this guy, and let's head into conclusions now, to me, will change everything for how I summon, especially once he's formally announced. Beesler, at least as it stands in this kit I just broke down for you, is, if not the best, very, very close to the best normal hero in the game, a definitive triple S, a must-have, the kind of hero I don't want to summon for and get. He's the kind of hero I want to summon for and get 4 copies of. So I am only going to summon the absolute bare minimum until I hear that this guy is coming, or I hear that they're preemptively nerfing him into the turf. Again, and don't go hating on me if something changes. All of this disclaimer is up to change. Nothing is official yet, but we do have the makings of a truly thrilling hero, a hero I'm clearly so excited to tell you guys about, and a hero I am desperately going to want to have on my account. Let me know how you guys feel in the comments. What an amazing kit. What an amazing thing. We're finally getting a legendary Dolores. I couldn't be happier. If you like my stuff, please like it. Videos like this are a ton of work. Talking hours and hours of prep. So please, if you like it, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell. I appreciate all your support, guys. Share it with your mother, and I'll see you real soon. Bye.
Fastidious.